That's a big potion. Hunchback monster. Hey, hi, hello, how's it going there? Welcome back to House DM. Today we are going to be making some dungeon walls and some dungeon corners. Cool thing about these is I can like throw them at the wall and where did that even go? And it doesn't break because I'm the DM and I'm the only one that buys this foam. So fun fact, fun story time. Jake House story time here. I bought this roll of foam because I was going to make some dungeon tiles, because apparently in the state of Oregon you can't buy half-inch XPS insulation foam. Who would have thought? I guess it's not very efficient at doing its job, so you can only get a minimum of 1-inch thickness, which is fine if you have like a giant house to store all of your foam projects in, but I don't got the space for that. So I bought these this 10 millimeter. It's about 10 millimeters in American terminology. That's about, don't quote me on this, I don't know how to use this mechanism here. It's a little bit less than a ½ inch. Hi, my name is Jake. I know how to use a ruler. I am so off topic right now. That's what we're doing, making dungeon corners. Let's get to the video. Alright, so I picked up this roll of EVA foam from Amazon for about 20 bucks. And the first thing you're going to want to do is cut it into a smaller piece like this square here, so that you can make ½ inch strips of this foam. Though it's actually better to make them about 3/4 of an inch thick, and you'll see why later in this video. And they don't need to be perfect. If you're going to do this kind of a project, you need to make a ton of these blocks. Now, this EVA foam is a little different than XPS foam. You do have to run your knife across it a couple times to get a full-on clean cut. Otherwise, you'll have these like weird little lines showing up on the sides. Now, each dungeon wall corner is made up of about 6 of these blocks. So you're going to need a ton of these to comfortably populate your dungeon. Oh yeah, that's real satisfying. So here's how I laid the foundation. When you stack bricks, you logically want them to be offset so the grout lines don't line up, and this would typically give your structure more durability. In order to get that look, these corners would have to be asymmetrical, and here I'm just making sure to build them in like pairs. Here's a good close-up of that line I was talking about if you don't cut the foam well with a sharp blade. And now I'm just going around this piece and cutting it up, roughing it up, making it look as though these bricks have been left here for a while, and to give some edge high points so when the inevitable dry brush comes, the bricks will have some good character. Now, I do have to say this is the most tedious part of this entire project, so if you are going to try to replicate it, you might as well just pull up a bunch of House DM videos and just binge watch all my stuff. Also, if you're new here, hi, hello, welcome! If you like this video and want to see more, don't forget to click that subscribe button and ring that little bell icon. You the best. And yes, I know my hot glue gun has seen better days, but I will continue to use it until it dies on me. And so for this part, I'm just using a little tiny bead of glue to hold these base blocks together. I don't want to use too much and have it overflow onto the sides, because that can affect the ability of the corner walls to stand up properly. So just use a little tiny bit of glue, not too much. And there we go, it's all glued up. And only 15 more to go. Now for the walls, I do something a little bit different. These are only going to be about 4 inches long, and you'll notice on the second row of blocks that you'll have to cut one of the blocks in half to kind of give it that overlapping grout line look. Don't forget to clean up any hot glue wisps. It's better to do this before you paint. Alright, there's our second wall. Now time to crank out the rest. I'm not gonna lie, this was a lot to do in one sitting. Here are 10 walls and 16 corners, and yes, that glass jar is full of all of the brick trimmings from just this project. I plan to save them for something else down the line, but until I figure that out, they're just gonna sit in that jar. Now, EVA foam takes paint in a really weird way, so I thought I'd water down this black paint really well and then add a couple drops of dish soap to help it flow into the cracks and crevices. This ended up working out really well, though I did have to go back and touch up a few spots that I missed. Once I was happy with the coverage, I let them sit overnight until they were completely bone dry. Now I'm inspecting my test wall here just to check the color palette that I used. I used a black to a dark gray to a light gray dry brush and then ended up with a tan. So I just wanted to make sure I replicated that for all of these new walls and corners. While painting the gray, I made sure to brush it really lightly. I did this so I wouldn't get paint into the dark corners, as I wanted those to look shadowed, and I wasn't sure at this stage if I was going to use a black wash or not. Happy with those, I moved on to this Craft Smart Gray, which is a much lighter shade than the Artist Loft Gray. I love adding dry brush highlights. This is where you can really see these walls come to life. And gosh, it looks good. Oh, crikey! We're now observing the crafting DM in his natural habitat. Rip, Steve, you're still missed. Now, remember earlier in the video I mentioned making the walls 3/4 of an inch instead of a 1/2 inch? Well, here's me figuring out my error. Oh boy. So I made a mistake. I forgot that on my first test project, I made the bottom tiles pretty thick intentionally, so when I throw it on the table, it will actually stay up more often than not. Didn't do that for the rest of them. So all these ones have a very thin stone base, and unfortunately they don't like to stay up unless I'm very careful, but somebody bumps the table and they all wobble, whereas this one does not wobble. So that's annoying. But I have these Home Depot panels, and these have a little bit of a weight to them, so just cut those up and we're going to mount them on these little bases, and hopefully that'll fix the problem. So I got these free test tiles from Home Depot back when I was building a floor in my old van, and these are perfect for fixing this little oops, and might actually make them better. These are also really easy to score, and then you can just break them right at that score mark and they come apart pretty cleanly. Yep, these will work great. Now I just need to paint them black and then a dark gray again so they can blend in a little better. And then we'll be good to go. I realized I didn't finish dry brushing the walls with tan, so I'm gonna do it now. The tan gives a very faint, discolored look that is much easier to see off of camera, but you'll just have to trust me on this one. And once that's done, we can move on to hot glue these walls to my fancy little tile bases. Hot glue dries real quick, and once it did, I had no doubt that these were going to be some seriously tough dungeon walls. Here I'm demonstrating some of the modularity of these walls and how helpful they can be at your table. I thought they might be just a little bit too high for D&D, but I also wanted them to be useful for Frostgrave, so they served me well at this height. Alright, now I think I'm actually in the camera frame. YouTuber problems. Anyway, so Minwax top coat spray. I'm going to use this clear satin to put a top coat on all of my wonderful walls, so when I accidentally TPK my party, I can just pick these up and throw them out the wall in a fit of rage. I mean, I'm not going to actually do that. It's nice to know that I can just wipe these off of my board and just put them in my box to store for later, which is pretty... I think that's pretty important for a dungeon wall set for what's considered pretty cheap. Now, I wanted to make sure that the spray I'm using here wouldn't melt the EVA foam, so I definitely tested it out on a spare piece of foam first. Always test first. Don't ruin your project. So when I run my campaign, everything is in theater of the mind until the moment that initiative is rolled. Once initiative is rolled, I'll take like this tile or a separate tile that I built out the entire encounter, and I will put it down in front of my players. In fact, let's do that. Let's do that right now. So it looks something like this. And I will lay out my entire encounter. Of course, you know, this is revealing a lot more information, but this is like the DM's perspective. This is what's in my mind. The players just came out of this corridor, you know, and they open this door and they head into this room. Pretend there's not spiders there right now. You know, they'll come into this room, realize that this tile right here, as they go to inspect this portcullis, is actually a trap, and then this door slams shut, and now they're trapped in here, and oh my god, now the spiders have arrived. If combat is inevitable at this point, which it is, I'll bring this board out and set it down without this section, without this section, without this section built. So this is always an exciting moment because I love to show off my terrain and all the hard work that I put into building a visual representation of a scenario. And I think with these dungeon corners and walls, now I can do this in a very quick and easy way. I'm so excited to use these setups in my future D&D games, and it is going to be so freaking cool, and I'm ready for it. This has been something I've been trying to work on for a long time. I hope you found that video helpful. Don't forget to do all the YouTube stuff and things, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Oh my god, I need to get a haircut.